Before we begin the story, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The crystal chandeliers of the Rosewood Grand Hotel cast golden light across marble floors, so polished they reflected every elegant detail of the luxury ballroom. White orchids cascaded from tall silver vases, their petals perfect and untouched. A string quartet played softly in the corner, the melody drifting through air that smelled of expensive perfume and champagne. Tomorrow, this room would host the wedding of the year. Tonight, it was filled with the laughter of the rehearsal dinner, where two families prepared to unite their fortunes in holy matrimony. Sophia Bennett stood outside the ballroom doors, smoothing down her simple black dress. Her hands trembled slightly as she checked her reflection in the gilded mirror hanging on the wall. Dark brown hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and her green eyes sparkled with nervous energy. She looked presentable enough, though nothing like the glittering guests inside. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the heavy doors. The noise hit her first. Clinking glasses, bubbling conversations, the rustle of expensive fabric. She scanned the crowd, searching for the man who had hired her for this impossible task. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What kind of person pays a stranger $10,000 to ruin a wedding? "You must be Sophia." The voice came from behind her, deep and smooth as aged whiskey. She turned, and her breath caught in her throat. The man standing before her was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders filling out a perfectly tailored black suit. His dark hair was styled just messy enough to look effortless, and his blue eyes were the color of a winter sky, cold and assessing. A sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and lips that looked like they rarely smiled completed a face that belonged on magazine covers, not in her chaotic life. "Mr. Hastings?" she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Adrian." He extended his hand, his gaze never leaving hers. "We're about to pretend we're madly in love. You should probably use my first name." His handshake was firm and warm, lasting a second longer than necessary. Sophia pulled her hand back, tucking it behind her, as if she'd touched something dangerous. "Right. Adrian." She swallowed hard. "So, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to break up your brother's wedding by pretending to be your girlfriend, and somehow convincing him he's making a mistake?" Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Not pretending. You'll be my fiancé. It's more believable. And you won't convince him of anything. You'll simply exist, be charming, and create enough doubt that he'll realize the truth himself. The truth being that he's marrying the wrong woman." Adrian's voice dropped, sharp enough to cut. "Victoria Ashford is a social climber who sees my brother as a meal ticket. Marcus is brilliant, but naive when it comes to matters of the heart. He thinks she loves him. She loves his bank account." Sophia bit her lip, studying him. She'd answered his cryptic job posting online 3 days ago, desperate enough to ignore the red flags. Personal assistant needed for weekend event. Excellent pay. Discretion required. When they'd met at a quiet cafe to discuss details, he'd laid out the plan with the cold precision of a corporate merger. Show up at the rehearsal dinner as his surprise fiancé. Be affectionate enough to seem genuine. Plant seeds of doubt about Victoria's character. If the wedding proceeded anyway, he'd still pay half. If it was called off, she'd get the full amount. $10,000 would cover her mother's surgery, with enough left over for 3 months of rent. Sophia had said yes before her conscience could talk her out of it. "And if your brother hates me for this?" she asked now, searching Adrian's face for something human beneath the ice. "He'll forgive me eventually. Brothers always do." But something flickered in his eyes, something that looked almost like pain. "Besides, better he hate me now than waste his life with someone who'll destroy him." Before Sophia could respond, a woman's voice rang out across the ballroom, high and crystalline. "Adrian, darling, where have you been hiding?" They both turned to see a stunning blonde gliding toward them in a silver gown that probably cost more than Sophia's car. Her smile was wide and white, her eyes calculating as they swept over Sophia from head to toe, clearly finding her lacking. "Victoria." Adrian's tone went flat. "Shouldn't you be with my brother? Marcus is talking business with Daddy." Victoria waved a manicured hand dismissively, then leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming. "But more importantly, who is this?" Adrian's arm snaked around Sophia's waist, pulling her against his side so smoothly she barely had time to gasp. His body was solid and warm, and her pulse kicked up traitorously. "This," he said, his voice taking on a warmth that hadn't been there before, "is Sophia Bennett, my fiancée." The ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Victoria's smile froze on her face, her eyes widening in shock. Sophia felt every gaze in the room turn toward them, whispers erupting like wildfire. "You're what?" Victoria's voice climbed an octave. Adrian tightened his grip on Sophia's waist, and she forced herself to lean into him, to look up at him with what she hoped resembled adoration. His eyes met hers, and for a split second, something electric passed between them, a jolt of awareness that made her skin tingle. "My fiancée," Adrian repeated, never breaking eye contact with Sophia. "I wanted to keep it quiet, but seeing how happy Marcus is, I couldn't help myself. Sophia, darling, I think it's time we made it official." Darling, the word hung in the air between them. Sophia's mind raced. This was it, the point of no return. She could back out now, walk away from this insane plan and this dangerously attractive man and his family drama. She could go back to her tiny apartment and figure out some other way to save her mother. Or she could play along. She looked at Victoria's perfectly made-up face, saw the flash of something ugly beneath the shock, something possessive and cold. Then she thought of her mother's tired smile, the medical bills stacked on the kitchen counter, the phone calls from debt collectors. Sophia smiled, stretching up on her toes to press a kiss to Adrian's cheek. His skin was warm, slightly rough with 5 o'clock shadow. She caught the scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive. "I'm so glad we're not hiding anymore," she said softly, her voice carrying just enough for nearby guests to hear. "I was getting tired of keeping you all to myself." Adrian's eyes darkened, and his hand moved to the small of her back, possessive and sure. "Then let's tell everyone, shall we?" The announcement hit the rehearsal dinner like a bomb. Within seconds, Adrian's parents appeared, his mother's face a mask of delighted surprise, his father's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Marcus pushed through the crowd, his expression caught somewhere between shock and betrayal. "Adrian! What the hell?" Marcus grabbed his brother's arm, pulling him aside. Sophia found herself suddenly alone, surrounded by curious stares and whispered speculations. She smoothed her dress again, a nervous habit, and reached for a champagne flute from a passing waiter. Her hand shook slightly as she brought it to her lips. What had she gotten herself into? "So, you're the one who finally caught Adrian Hastings?" A woman's voice, warm with amusement, made Sophia turn. An older woman with kind eyes and silver hair stood beside her, smiling. "I'm Margaret, Adrian's aunt. And I must say, you've accomplished what half the women in this city have been trying to do for years." Sophia managed a smile. "I didn't catch him so much as he caught me." Margaret laughed. "Oh, I like you already. That boy needs someone who doesn't worship the ground he walks on. Too many people treat him like he's made of ice and money." "Isn't he?" The words slipped out before Sophia could stop them. Margaret's eyes twinkled. "Stick around long enough, dear. you might be surprised at what you find underneath all that frost. Across the room, Adrian and Marcus stood toe-to-toe, their conversation clearly heated despite the low volumes. Marcus's face was flushed, his hands gesturing sharply, while Adrian remained perfectly still, his expression unreadable. Victoria hovered nearby, her earlier composure cracking as she clutched Marcus's arm. "This is quite the drama," Margaret murmured. "First Marcus springs Victoria on us 6 months ago, and now Adrian produces a fiancé out of thin air. Makes one wonder what Thanksgiving will look like this year." Before Sophia could respond, Adrian was suddenly beside her again, his hand finding hers with unsettling ease. His fingers threaded through hers, warm and strong, and her traitorous heart skipped a beat. "Sorry about that," he said, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Marcus is understandably confused. I may have forgotten to mention my engagement to him." "You forgot?" Sophia whispered back, aware of the eyes still watching them. "How do you forget to tell your brother you're engaged?" "We've been distant lately." Adrian's jaw tightened. Since Victoria entered the picture. He led her toward the center of the ballroom where his parents waited. His mother, Catherine Hastings, was elegant in navy blue, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her smile gracious but cool. His father, Richard Hastings, stood tall and imposing, his gray suit as sharp as his assessing gaze. "Mother, Father," Adrian said smoothly, "I'd like you to properly meet Sophia Bennett, my fiancée." Catherine stepped forward, taking Sophia's hands in hers. "My dear, what a surprise. Adrian has been terribly secretive about you. Tell me, how did you two meet?" Sophia's mind went blank. They hadn't discussed this part. She opened her mouth, desperately searching for a believable lie, when Adrian's arm slipped around her waist again. "At a gallery opening," he said, his tone affectionate. Sophia was standing in front of a painting, absolutely transfixed. I made some pretentious comment about the artist's use of color, and she told me I was completely wrong. Sophia's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly, looking up at him with a smile. "You were wrong. The painting wasn't about color at all. It was about negative space." And I was so charmed by her confidence that I asked her to dinner. Adrian's lips curved in something that almost resembled a real smile. She said no. 3 times, Sophia added, warming to the story despite herself, until he showed up at the coffee shop where I work with flowers, and an admission that maybe he didn't know everything about art after all. Catherine laughed, delighted. "Oh, I do like her already, Adrian. She's nothing like those awful women you usually date." Richard remained silent, his eyes moving between them with calculating precision. "And when exactly did this engagement take place?" 2 weeks ago, Adrian answered without hesitation. "I wanted to wait until after Marcus's wedding to announce it. Didn't want to steal his thunder. But being here, seeing how happy he is, I couldn't keep it to myself any longer." The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly that Sophia almost believed it herself. She found herself wondering how many times he'd lied before, how easily deception came to a man who looked like carved marble. "Well," Richard said finally, "I suppose congratulations are in order, though I would have appreciated a heads up before you made such an announcement at your brother's rehearsal dinner. Spontaneity keeps life interesting, Father." Adrian's voice carried an edge, something sharp beneath the politeness. Dinner was announced, saving them from further interrogation. Adrian guided Sophia to their seats, his hand never leaving the small of her back. They were positioned directly across from Marcus and Victoria, a seating arrangement that felt deliberate and uncomfortable. Throughout the meal, Sophia played her part. She laughed at Adrian's stories, touched his arm at appropriate moments, and answered questions about their fictional relationship with carefully crafted details. It was exhausting, maintaining this constant performance, feeling his warmth beside her while knowing it was all pretend. But the strangest part was how natural it sometimes felt. The way his hand found hers under the table when she seemed nervous. The way he leaned in to whisper explanations about various family members. The way his eyes softened when he looked at her, even though she knew it was just part of the act. Victoria, meanwhile, grew more agitated as the evening progressed. Her laugh became too loud, her touches on Marcus too possessive. She kept shooting Sophia venomous glances, as if trying to burn holes through her with sheer will. "So, Sophia," Victoria said suddenly, her voice cutting through the dinner conversation. "What is it you do? Adrian's always dated such accomplished women. Models, lawyers, that one Olympic athlete." The table went quiet. Sophia felt her cheeks flush. This was it. The moment Victoria exposed her as ordinary, as someone who didn't belong in this glittering world. Adrian's hand tightened on hers beneath the table, but before he could speak, Sophia lifted her chin. "I'm a barista," she said clearly. "I make coffee for people who are usually too busy to be polite about it. It's honest work, and I'm good at it." "Oh," Victoria's smile was saccharine. "How quaint." "Sophia's also an artist," Adrian said, his voice cool. "She's been featured in several local galleries. Her work is extraordinary." Sophia stared at him. How did he know that? She'd barely mentioned her painting in their brief cafe meeting, had brushed past it as a foolish hobby she couldn't afford to pursue. "Really?" Catherine leaned forward, interested. "What medium do you prefer?" "Watercolors, mostly," Sophia heard herself say. "Abstract landscapes. I like capturing the feeling of a place rather than its exact appearance." "How fascinating." Catherine turned to her husband. "Richard, didn't we just talk about commissioning a piece for the summer house?" "We did," Richard agreed, studying Sophia with new interest. "Perhaps you'd be willing to discuss a commission with me, Sophia." She nodded, stunned. This was spinning completely out of control. She was supposed to be breaking up a wedding, not getting commissioned for artwork by a man who probably owned half the city. After dinner, guests mingled in the ballroom. Sophia excused herself to find the restroom, desperate for a moment alone to catch her breath. The ladies' room was all marble and gold fixtures, soft lighting making her reflection look almost ethereal. She gripped the edge of the sink, staring at herself in the mirror. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "This is insane." The door opened, and Victoria stepped inside, her silver gown swishing. She checked the stalls, confirming they were alone, before turning to Sophia with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Let's drop the act, shall we?" Victoria crossed her arms. "I don't know what game you and Adrian are playing, but I see right through it." Sophia straightened, meeting her gaze. "I don't know what you mean." "Please." Victoria laughed, sharp and cold. "Adrian suddenly has a fiancé no one's ever heard of? Right before his brother's wedding? He's trying to undermine me, to turn Marcus against me, and you're his little puppet." "That's ridiculous." Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "I've worked too hard to get where I am. I'm not going to let Adrian or anyone else ruin this for me. Marcus is mine. His name, his money, his connections, they're all mine. And if you get in my way, I will destroy you." The threat hung in the air between them, ugly and raw. Sophia's pulse hammered, but she forced herself not to back down. "If you really loved Marcus, you wouldn't need to threaten me." Sophia kept her voice steady. "You'd be confident enough in your relationship not to see me as a threat." Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. Neither do you." The bathroom door swung open, and an elderly woman entered, oblivious to the tension. Victoria's expression smoothed instantly into a pleasant smile. She touched Sophia's arm lightly, all fake sweetness. "I'm so glad we could have this little chat," she said loudly enough for the newcomer to hear. "Welcome to the family, Sophia." Then she swept out, leaving Sophia shaking. Sophia returned to the ballroom on unsteady legs, Victoria's threat echoing in her mind. She scanned the crowd for Adrian and found him standing by the tall windows overlooking the hotel gardens, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He stood alone despite the party swirling around him, looking out at the darkness beyond the glass with an expression that could only be described as haunted. She approached slowly, and he must have sensed her presence because he turned before she spoke. His eyes swept over her face, sharp and assessing. What happened? His voice was low, dangerous. What makes you think something happened? You're pale, and your hands are shaking. He set down his glass and turned to face her fully. Did Victoria say something to you? Sophia tried to laugh it off. Nothing I couldn't handle. Adrian's jaw tightened. Tell me. There was something in his tone, something protective and fierce that made her pulse quicken. She shouldn't like how he looked at her, shouldn't feel this warmth spreading through her chest. This was just a job, just a performance. She knows, Sophia said quietly. She knows this isn't real, and she threatened me. Said she'd destroy me if I got in her way. A muscle jumped in Adrian's jaw. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. She won't touch you. I won't let her. Adrian, this is crazy. Maybe we should just stop before someone actually gets hurt. No. The word came out sharp, definitive. Victoria just showed her true colors. If she's willing to threaten you, a complete stranger. Imagine what she'll do to Marcus once she has legal claim to his assets. He needs to see who she really is. Sophia bit her lip, searching his face. There was more to this than he'd told her, she realized. This wasn't just about protecting his brother's fortune. There was something personal here, something that made Adrian's eyes burn with quiet fury. What did she do to you? Sophia asked softly. Adrian's expression shuddered immediately. This isn't about me. Isn't it? For a moment, she thought he might actually answer. His eyes met hers, and something passed between them, something electric and dangerous. Then Marcus appeared at Adrian's elbow, breaking the spell. We need to talk, Marcus said, his voice tight. Now. Adrian nodded curtly. He turned to Sophia, and before she could react, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her forehead. The gesture was tender, intimate, and completely unexpected. His lips were warm against her skin, and she felt the kiss all the way down to her toes. I'll be right back, he murmured. Then to Marcus, let's take this outside. The brothers disappeared through the French doors leading to the terrace, leaving Sophia standing alone, her hand pressed to her forehead, where she could still feel the ghost of his lips. They've always been like that, a voice said beside her. Sophia turned to find Adrian's Aunt Margaret, a knowing smile on her face. Fire and ice, those two. Marcus is all warmth and trust, while Adrian keeps everyone at arm's length. It's been worse since their fallout. Fallout? Margaret's expression grew sad. About a year ago, Marcus was dating another woman, lovely girl named Rebecca. Adrian tried to warn him that she was unfaithful, but Marcus didn't believe him. Called Adrian jealous, controlling. By the time Marcus discovered the truth, Rebecca had run off with a significant amount of his money, and the damage between the brothers was done. They barely speak now. Understanding crashed over Sophia like a wave. This wasn't about money or social climbing. This was about Adrian trying to protect his brother again, trying to prevent another betrayal. And Marcus, already burned once by Adrian's warnings, refusing to listen. Does Marcus know about Rebecca being why Adrian's so concerned about Victoria? Oh, he knows, Margaret sighed. But sometimes pride is more powerful than reason. Marcus wants to prove he can make his own decisions, that he doesn't need his older brother playing guardian, even if that decision destroys him. Through the glass doors, Sophia could see the brothers facing off on the terrace. Marcus's gestures were wild, emotional. Adrian stood perfectly still, arms crossed, his face carved from stone. The conversation looked heated, painful. Adrian cares more than he lets on, Margaret said quietly. He just has a terrible time showing it. His father raised both boys to be strong, to never show weakness. But where Marcus rebelled against that coldness, Adrian embraced it. At least on the surface. Sophia watched Adrian through the glass, seeing him with new eyes. Not a cold, manipulative man hiring someone to ruin his brother's happiness, but a scared older brother desperate to prevent another tragedy, the only way he knew how. "He's going to get hurt either way, isn't he?" Sophia whispered. "If the wedding goes through, he loses his brother to someone who will hurt him. If it gets called off, Marcus might never forgive him." Margaret touched her arm gently. "Welcome to the family, dear. We're all experts at loving each other badly." The brothers returned 20 minutes later, both looking stormy. Marcus went straight to Victoria, pulling her into a tight embrace that looked more possessive than affectionate. Victoria shot Sophia a triumphant smile over his shoulder. Adrian made his way back to Sophia, his expression unreadable. "Ready to leave?" "The dinner's not over." "It is for us." He took her hand, his grip almost desperate. "Please." Something in his voice made her nod. They said their goodbyes, Adrian's mother kissing Sophia's cheek and extracting promises to have lunch soon, his father watching with those calculating eyes that missed nothing. In the elevator down to the lobby, silence stretched between them. Sophia watched Adrian's reflection in the polished doors. His jaw was clenched, his shoulders tight with tension. When the doors opened, he led her through the glittering lobby without a word. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp. Valet brought around a sleek black Mercedes, and Adrian held the door open for her. She slid into the leather seat, breathing in the scent of expensive car and his cologne. He drove in silence, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Sophia wanted to ask where they were going, but sensed he needed the quiet. They wound through the city streets, away from the lights and noise, until he pulled into a parking lot overlooking the river. The city skyline glittered across the water, reflected in rippling waves. Adrian killed the engine but didn't move to get out. He just sat there, staring at the lights. "He hates me," Adrian said finally, his voice rough. "Marcus thinks I'm trying to control his life again, that I can't stand to see him happy." Sophia turned in her seat to face him. "Margaret told me about Rebecca." Adrian's eyes closed briefly. "Of course she did. You're trying to protect him." "Lot of good it's doing." He laughed bitterly. "Maybe everyone's right. Maybe I'm just a controlling bastard who can't let his brother make his own mistakes." "Or maybe you love him," Sophia said softly. "And love makes us do desperate things." Adrian turned to look at her finally, and the pain in his eyes made her chest ache. "What if I'm wrong? What if Victoria really does love him, and I'm destroying his happiness for nothing?" "Do you really believe that?" "No." The word was harsh. "I've seen the way she looks at him when she thinks no one's watching, like he's a prize she's won. There's no warmth there, no real affection, just calculation." Sophia reached out, hesitating for just a moment before placing her hand over his on the gear shift. His fingers were cold, and they turned immediately to grip hers. "Then trust your instincts," she said. "And maybe trust that Marcus is smarter than you think. Maybe he'll see it on his own. And if he doesn't, then you did everything you could. The rest is up to him." They sat like that for a long moment, hands entwined, staring out at the glittering city. Sophia knew she should pull away, should remind them both that this was fake, that she was being paid to play a part. But something kept her still, kept her hand in his. "Thank you," Adrian said quietly. For tonight. For playing along even when I know this must seem insane. It is insane, Sophia agreed. But I get it. Now. Why you're doing this? He looked at her, really looked at her, and Sophia felt her breath catch. There was something in his eyes, something that made her wonder if the electricity between them was all acting on his part. I should get you home, Adrian said, but he didn't start the car. Tomorrow's the wedding. Are you still willing to go through with this? Sophia knew she should say no, should take her half payment and walk away before this got more complicated. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. I'm not leaving you to face this alone. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. Then, slowly, he lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. It was barely a touch, just a brush of warm lips against her skin, but it sent fire racing up her arm. You're not what I expected, he murmured against her hand. Neither are you. They stayed there by the river for another hour, talking about everything and nothing. Adrian told her about growing up in the shadow of his father's expectations, about business school and the relentless pressure to be perfect. Sophia told him about her mother's illness, about giving up art school to work full-time, about dreams deferred and bills that never stopped coming. By the time he pulled up in front of her apartment building, a modest structure in a neighborhood worlds away from his luxury penthouse, something had shifted between them. The lines of their fake relationship had blurred, tangled into something that felt dangerously real. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through Sophia's apartment windows like an unwelcome alarm. She'd barely slept, tossing and turning, her mind replaying every moment from the previous night. The way Adrian had looked at her in the car, the press of his lips against her knuckles, the vulnerability in his voice when he'd talked about his brother. Stop it, she told herself firmly. This is a job. He's paying you. Don't be stupid enough to catch feelings. But her traitorous heart didn't seem to be listening. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Adrian. Car will pick you up at 2. Dress is being delivered at noon. Thank you for yesterday. Sophia stared at the message. Dress? She texted back. You didn't have to buy me a dress. His response came immediately. You're my fiancé. People will expect you to look the part. Consider it a work uniform. Work uniform. Right. Because that's all this was. Work. The dress arrived exactly at noon, delivered by a man in a sleek suit, carrying a garment bag that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Inside was the most beautiful gown Sophia had ever seen. Deep emerald green silk that shimmered when it moved, with a neckline that was elegant without being too revealing. Delicate beading caught the light like scattered stars. She tried it on with shaking hands. It fit perfectly, hugging her curves before flowing gracefully to the floor. Sophia barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked like she belonged in Adrian's world, like she could stand beside him without everyone immediately seeing she was a fraud. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call. Adrian's name lit up the screen. Hello? Did the dress arrive? His voice was all business, but she could hear something underneath it. Tension, maybe. Or nerves. Yes. Adrian, it's too much. Does it fit? Perfectly, but then it's not too much. A pause. Sophia, I need to tell you something before today. Her heart kicked up. What? Victoria knows who you really are. Sophia's blood ran cold. What? How? I don't know. She called me this morning, very pleased with herself. She's hired an investigator, apparently. She knows you're a barista, knows about your mother's medical bills, knows I hired you. His voice turned harsh. She's planning to expose us at the wedding. Oh, God. Sophia sank onto her bed. Adrian, I'm so sorry. I should never have agreed to this. Now your family. We'll deal with it, he interrupted. Actually, This might work in our favor. How could this possibly work in our favor? Victoria's so focused on exposing us that she's revealing her own true nature. She's vindictive, calculating. Marcus needs to see that. Adrian's voice softened slightly. But I'll understand if you want to back out. This is going to get ugly. Sophia thought about her mother, about the surgery that couldn't wait much longer. She thought about Adrian's face last night, the pain in his eyes when he talked about his brother. She thought about Victoria's threats, about the smug certainty in her voice that she'd already won. "I'm not backing out," Sophia heard herself say. "If Victoria wants a show, let's give her one." Adrian was silent for a beat. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Besides, you've already bought me this ridiculously expensive dress. I should at least wear it once." She heard him exhale, almost like a laugh. "Thank you, Sophia. I mean that. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "After today, no matter what happens, you'll try to actually talk to Marcus. Not as the controlling older brother, but as someone who's scared of losing him. Sometimes, people need to hear that you care, even if they don't want to listen." Another pause. "You're a lot wiser than I gave you credit for." "I get that a lot," Sophia said, surprising herself with a smile. "Must be all that coffee steam. It opens the third eye." This time he definitely laughed, a warm sound that made her chest feel tight. "I'll see you at 2. The car arrived exactly on time. Not Adrian's Mercedes, but a town car, with a driver who nodded politely and held the door. During the drive, Sophia practiced her breathing, trying to calm the swarm of butterflies in her stomach. This was it. The final act of their little play. St. Catherine's Church rose before them, all Gothic spires and stained glass windows. Luxury cars lined the street, and guests in designer outfits streamed up the stone steps. Sophia had never felt more out of place in her life. Adrian was waiting at the entrance, and the sight of him knocked the breath from her lungs. He wore a charcoal gray suit that looked like it had been sewn directly onto his body, a black tie, and a crisp white shirt. His dark hair was styled back, emphasizing those razor-sharp cheekbones. He looked like every fantasy she'd ever had, and several she hadn't known she'd needed. When he saw her, he went completely still. His eyes traveled slowly from her face, down the emerald dress and back up. And when their gazes met again, there was something there that made her knees weak. "You look incredible," he said, his voice rough. "You clean up pretty well yourself." She tried to keep her tone light, but it came out breathless. He offered his arm, and she took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath the expensive fabric. Together, they walked into the church, and Sophia felt every eye turn toward them. Whispers erupted like small fires. "Is that Adrian's fiancée? Where did she come from?" She's so different from his usual type. They took their seats near the front, on the groom's side. Marcus stood at the altar with his groomsmen, looking nervous and excited. When he spotted Adrian and Sophia, his expression hardened. He turned away deliberately. "He'll come around," Sophia whispered. "Maybe." Adrian's hand found hers, squeezing gently. The ceremony began with traditional pomp. The bridesmaids processed down the aisle in rose gold dresses, followed by the flower girl scattering petals. Then the music swelled, and Victoria appeared. She was objectively beautiful in her white gown, all lace and crystals, a veil floating behind her like mist. But as she walked past their row, her eyes locked on Sophia and Adrian, and there was nothing beautiful in her expression. Pure venom. The ceremony proceeded. The priest talked about love and commitment, about honesty and trust. Sophia felt Adrian tense beside her, his jaw clenched so tight, she worried he might crack a tooth. "We are gathered here today," the priest intoned, "to join Victoria Ashford and Marcus Hastings in holy matrimony." If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." The traditional words hung in the air. This was the moment. This was where it would all unravel. The church was silent, hundreds of guests holding their breath. Adrian didn't move. Sophia glanced at him, confused. Wasn't this the plan? To object? To create a scene? But Adrian just sat there, staring at his brother with an expression of such profound sadness that it made Sophia's throat tight. The priest opened his mouth to continue when a voice rang out from the back of the church. "I object!" Every head swiveled. A young woman stood in the last row, her hands trembling, her face pale but determined. She had strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes, and she was staring directly at Marcus. "Rebecca!" Marcus breathed, his face going white. Adrian's hand tightened on Sophia's almost painfully. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Rebecca walked down the aisle, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. I know I have no right to be here, no right to interrupt. But I can't let you make this mistake." Victoria's face twisted with fury. "Security! Get her out of here!" "No." Marcus raised a hand, his voice shaking. "Let her speak." Rebecca stopped a few feet from the altar, tears streaming down her face. "I was wrong to steal from you. I was young and stupid, and I let someone manipulate me. I've spent the last year working to pay back every penny, and I've been in therapy trying to understand why I did something so terrible to someone I cared about. Rebecca, please just listen." She wiped her eyes. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But Victoria..." She turned to look at the bride. "I know her. We work together, Marcus. She's the one who convinced me to take your money. She had a whole plan. She said you were weak, that rich men like you deserve to be taken for everything you had." The church erupted. Gasps, shouts, guests surging to their feet. Victoria's face went from pale to red. "She's lying!" Victoria shrieked. "She's a criminal trying to ruin my wedding!" But Marcus was staring at Victoria with dawning horror. "Is it true?" "Of course not." "Marcus, baby, she's just jealous. She wants you back and she'll say anything. Is it true?" The words came out like hammer blows. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. Then her expression shifted, hardened. The mask dropped entirely. "So, what if it is?" She laughed, high and harsh. "You're all such fools. You, Marcus, with your puppy dog eyes and your trust fund. Adrian, with his savior complex. Rebecca did exactly what I told her to, and she was supposed to take the fall and disappear, not develop a conscience." Marcus took a step back, looking like she'd struck him. You never loved me." "Love?" Victoria spat the word. "Love doesn't pay for penthouses and diamonds and the life I deserve. I've worked too hard, played this game too perfectly, to let it fall apart now." Adrian was on his feet, pulling Sophia up with him. "Get away from my brother." "Or what?" Victoria turned her venom on him. "You'll expose your fake fiancé? Oh yes, Adrian. I know all about your little scheme. Sophia Bennett, 26, barista, desperate for money. You paid her to play house and break up my wedding. How noble." Every eye in the church turned to Sophia and Adrian. She felt the weight of their judgment, their shock, their condemnation. The church erupted into chaos. Guests shouted, phones came out to record the scandal, and Victoria stood at the altar like a queen, surveying her kingdom's destruction. Marcus looked between his brother and his almost bride, betrayal written across every line of his face. Adrian's hand was still wrapped around Sophia's, grip tight enough to hurt. She could feel the tension radiating from him, could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. But when he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "You're right," he said, his words cutting through the noise. "I hired Sophia. I paid her to pretend to be my fiancé because I knew you were poison, Victoria. I knew you'd destroy my brother, the way you and Rebecca nearly destroyed him before." Victoria's smile was triumphant. "And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, Adrian Hastings, so desperate to control his brother that he'd resort to fraud and deception." "At least I did it out of love," Adrian shot back. "What's your excuse?" Marcus stepped between them, his face a mask of hurt and fury. "Both of you need to stop. Adrian, I can't believe you'd do this. Hire someone to sabotage my wedding? That's insane." "It is insane," Adrian agreed, his voice rough. "But watching you walk into another trap was going to kill me, Marcus. Rebecca broke you. I had to watch you put yourself back together piece by piece. I couldn't do it again. So you lied to me. You brought a stranger into our family and lied to everyone." Marcus's voice cracked. "How is that love, Adrian? How is that anything but control?" Sophia felt Adrian flinch beside her, saw the pain flash across his face. Before she could think better of it, she stepped forward. "He's right," she said, her voice carrying through the church. "Adrian hired me, offered me $10,000 to pretend to be his fiancé and help expose Victoria. And I said yes, because I'm desperate, and I need the money for my mother's surgery." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adrian turned to her, eyes wide with surprise and something that looked like fear. "But here's what else is true," Sophia continued, looking directly at Marcus. "Your brother spent the entire night last night hating himself for what he was doing. He's terrified of losing you. He's terrified of being wrong, of pushing you away, of having to watch you get hurt again. Everything he's done, no matter how misguided, came from a place of love." "You don't know what you're talking about," Marcus said bitterly. "You're just some girl he paid." "You're right. I am just some girl he paid. I barely know him. But I know desperation when I see it because I live it every day." She turned to Adrian, meeting his stunned gaze. "And I know the difference between someone trying to control you and someone who's drowning, trying to save you." The church had gone quiet, everyone transfixed by the unfolding drama. Victoria laughed, the sound harsh and grating. "How touching. The hired actress has feelings, but it doesn't change anything. Adrian still lied. He still manipulated everyone here. He's just as bad as he thinks I am." "No," a new voice said. Margaret pushed through the crowd, her kind face stern. "He's nothing like you, dear. Adrian has spent his entire life protecting his brother. Sometimes badly, sometimes too much, but always with love. You spent months pretending to care about Marcus just to access his bank account. There's no comparison." Other voices joined in. Friends of the family, relatives, even some of Victoria's own bridesmaids began murmuring agreement. The tide was turning. Victoria's composure cracked. "Fine. You want to know the truth? Marcus is boring. He's vanilla and predictable and so eager to please that manipulating him was almost too easy. But his money isn't boring. His connections aren't boring. And I was this close to having it all." She ripped the veil from her head, throwing it to the ground. "You can all go to hell, especially you, Adrian Hastings. I hope you're happy destroying your brother's life." With that, she stormed down the aisle in her white dress, her heels clicking violently against the stone floor. The church doors slammed behind her with an echoing boom. Silence descended, heavy and awkward. Sophia could hear her own heartbeat, feel Adrian's hand still clasped in hers, trembling now. Marcus stood at the altar, his face in his hands. After a long moment, he looked up at his brother. "I almost married her," he said, his voice hollow. "I almost did it, Adrian. Even after Rebecca, even after your warnings. I was so determined to prove I didn't need your protection that I nearly walked into something even worse. Adrian released Sophia's hand and moved toward his brother. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for lying, for manipulating, for not trusting you to figure it out yourself. His voice broke. I can't lose you, Marcus. You're all I have. For a heartbeat, Marcus didn't move. Then he closed the distance between them and pulled Adrian into a fierce embrace. You're an absolute bastard, you know that? Adrian's laugh was wet, choked. I know. But you're my bastard of a brother. Marcus pulled back, gripping Adrian's shoulders. We need to talk, really talk, about boundaries and trust, and how you can't keep trying to control my life even when you're scared. I know. Adrian nodded. I promise. No more schemes. No more manipulation. Good. Marcus turned to Sophia, his expression softening. And you. Thank you for being honest. You didn't have to stand up there and admit everything. Sophia shrugged, feeling suddenly self-conscious. I'm not very good at lying, it turns out. That's a good thing. Marcus smiled, then glanced between her and Adrian with a knowing look. Though I have a feeling not everything between you two was pretend. Both Adrian and Sophia started to protest, but Marcus held up a hand. Don't. I have eyes. The way you look at each other, the way you defended him, Adrian. He shook his head. I haven't seen you look at someone like that in years. Maybe ever. Adrian's face was carefully blank, but Sophia felt heat creep up her neck. It's not like that. It was just a job. Sure it was. Margaret appeared beside them, smiling. And I'm the Queen of England. I think, the priest interjected gently, we should clear the church. This wedding is clearly not happening today. The crowd began to disperse, guests murmuring amongst themselves, already crafting the story they'd tell at dinner parties for years to come. The Hastings wedding disaster, the hired fiancé, the vengeful bride exposed. Adrian's parents approached. Richard looked at his sons with an expression Sophia couldn't quite read. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled both of them into a brief, stiff hug. You both have a lot of growing up to do, he said gruffly. But I'm glad you have each other. Catherine kissed Marcus's cheek, then Adrian's. Family dinner next Sunday. Both of you. No excuses. Then she turned to Sophia. You too, dear. And we'll still need to discuss that commission. Mother, Adrian started. Hush. I like her. Even if you paid her to be here, she showed more integrity than half the people in this church. Catherine patted Sophia's arm. Besides, anyone brave enough to go along with one of Adrian's schemes deserves a medal, or at least a proper family dinner. As the church continued to empty, Sophia found herself alone with Adrian in one of the side aisles. Candles flickered around them, casting dancing shadows on the old stone walls. I should go, she said quietly. I'm sure you and Marcus need time to talk. And your family. Sophia. Adrian caught her hand. Wait. She turned back, her heart hammering. He was still so beautiful it hurt to look at him, standing there in his perfect suit, with his perfect face, and those eyes that saw too much. Thank you, he said, for everything. For going along with this insane plan, for standing up there and telling the truth, for defending me when you had no reason to. You're welcome, she tried to smile. I guess I should say thank you too. For the dress and the adventure, and she trailed off, unsure how to finish. And for reminding me what it feels like to be brave, even if it's stupid brave. Adrian's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, sending shivers up her arm. What if I don't want this to end here? Sophia's breath caught. What do you mean? I mean, he stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. The engagement was fake. But the way I feel when I'm with you, that's not fake. The way I couldn't stop thinking about you all night, that's not fake. The way I want to kiss you right now, in this church in front of God, and whoever's still watching, that's definitely not fake. Her pulse was thunder in her ears. Adrian, you're just caught up in the moment. The drama, the emotion. I'm caught up in you, he interrupted. And maybe that's crazy. Maybe we barely know each other. But I want to know you, Sophia. Really know you. Not as my fake fiancé, but as someone who might possibly, eventually, want to be with me for real. She should say no. Should remind him about the power imbalance, about how she was just a barista and he was a CEO, about how this was a terrible idea for so many reasons. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, I want that too. God help me, I want that too. Adrian's smile was like sunrise, bright and warm and transforming. Yeah? Yeah. She laughed, giddy and terrified. Though we should probably actually date before we tell your mother we're engaged for real. I don't think I can handle another family dinner as your fiancé just yet. Deal. He was still holding her hand, still standing close enough that she could count his eyelashes. How about we start with coffee? I hear you make excellent coffee. I make terrible coffee. The machine does all the work. Then I guess I'll have to come by every day until I figure out what you're actually good at. That could take a while. Good. His voice dropped, intimate and warm. I have time. 3 months. Later, autumn had painted the city in shades of gold and amber. Sophia stood at the window of Adrian's penthouse apartment, where she'd been spending more and more nights, watching leaves tumble through the air like copper coins. Behind her, she could hear Adrian in the kitchen, attempting to make dinner. I think the smoke alarm means it's ready, he called out. Sophia laughed, turning away from the window. True to his word, Adrian had shown up at the coffee shop every single day after the wedding disaster. Sometimes he ordered coffee, sometimes just hot water. But always he stayed, sitting at the corner table with his laptop, looking up to smile at her between meetings. They'd taken it slow. Real dates, real conversations. Learning each other without the weight of fake engagement and family drama pressing down on them. She'd met his friends, learned about his charity work that he never publicized, discovered that beneath the cold CEO exterior was someone who watched terrible reality TV, when stressed, and couldn't cook to save his life. He'd come to her tiny apartment, met her mother, who'd been cleared for surgery, thanks to his insistence on covering it completely. Consider it back pay, he'd said, when Sophia protested. He'd stood in her cramped space looking at her watercolors pinned to the walls, and the look on his face had been pure wonder. You're incredible, he'd whispered, tracing the edge of one abstract landscape. Why aren't you in a gallery? Because rent and medical bills don't care about art. They should. And then he'd made a phone call, and within 2 weeks, she had her first real showing at a small but respected gallery downtown. Now, as Sophia entered the kitchen to find Adrian waving a dish towel at the shrieking smoke detector, she felt something settle in her chest. Something warm and right and terrifyingly permanent. Need help? She asked, biting back a smile. I need a miracle. He managed to turn off the alarm, coughing slightly. Or possibly a fire extinguisher. How do you feel about takeout? I feel like it's the smart choice. She moved closer, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. But I appreciate the effort. He turned in her embrace, his hands coming up to frame her face. 3 months, and her heart still jumped when he looked at her like that, like she was something precious and surprising. I have something to tell you, he said, his expression turning serious. Sophia's stomach dipped. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just important. He took her hand, leading her to the living room where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering city. Marcus is getting married. What? Sophia's eyes widened. To who? I thought after Victoria, to Rebecca. Adrian's smile was soft. Turns out she really did spend the last year making amends and getting her life together. They've been talking, working through everything. He asked her last week, and she said yes. Sophia sank onto the couch, processing. And you're okay with this? I'm great with this. He sat beside her, keeping her hand in his. Because I've learned something important over the last few months. I can't protect Marcus from every possible hurt. And more importantly, I shouldn't try. He's an adult. He deserves to make his own choices, even if they're risky. That's very mature of you. Don't sound so surprised. He nudged her shoulder. I'm capable of growth. I know. I've seen it. She squeezed his hand. I'm really happy for them. There's more. Adrian's expression shifted, becoming almost nervous. Marcus asked if we'd be in the wedding. Both of us. Together. As your real girlfriend? As my real girlfriend, he confirmed. No pretending this time. Just us. Exactly as we are. Sophia felt emotion well up in her throat. I'd love that. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as dusk settled. Then Adrian shifted, his hand reaching into his pocket. Actually, there's one more thing. He pulled out a small velvet box, and Sophia's heart stopped. Adrian, wait, let me say this. He opened the box to reveal a simple, stunning ring, a single diamond on a platinum band, elegant and understated. I know it's only been 3 months. I know this is fast, possibly insane. But I also know that I haven't been pretending for a single second. Not since that night by the river. Maybe not even since you walked into that rehearsal dinner, looking terrified and brave all at once. Sophia's hands had started shaking. I don't want to wait years to know what I already know, Adrian continued, his voice rough with emotion. I don't want to be practical or careful or any of the things I've been my whole life. I want to be brave like you. I want to take the leap. You're really doing this, she breathed. You're really proposing. I'm really proposing. He slid off the couch onto one knee, and Sophia's vision blurred with tears. Sophia Bennett, will you marry me? For real this time? No contracts, no performance. Just us and whatever messy, imperfect, beautiful life we can build together. She launched herself at him, nearly knocking them both over, kissing him with everything she had. He caught her, his arms strong and sure around her, kissing her back with equal fervor. Is that a yes? He murmured against her lips. Yes. She pulled back just enough to see his face, to watch joy break across his features like dawn. Yes, absolutely. Yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Sophia laughed through her tears, looking at the diamond catching the city lights. How did you know my size? I had an accomplice, Adrian grinned. Your mother helped me pick it out last week. You met with my mother without telling me. I had to ask her. Permission. She's terrifying, by the way. Made me explain in detail exactly why I deserved to marry her daughter. And what did you tell her? The truth, that I don't deserve you, but I'm going to spend every day trying to. Sophia kissed him again, slower this time, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she rested her forehead against his. So, she said, her voice light despite the emotions churning through her. I guess we should tell your parents we're engaged. Again. Adrian groaned. My mother is going to be insufferable. She'll say she knew all along that we were really in love. Wasn't she right? He pulled back to look at her, his expression soft and open in a way it never was for anyone else. Yeah, she was right. I think I started falling in love with you the minute you agreed to my insane plan. What kind of person says yes to crashing a wedding with a complete stranger? The desperate kind, Sophia admitted. The kind who needed money for her mother's surgery and was willing to do something crazy to get it. And now? Now I'm the kind who's crazy about you. She traced her thumb along his jaw. The real you, not the ice-cold CEO everyone else sees. The one who watches reality TV and can't cook and gets that little wrinkle between his eyebrows when he's worried about his brother. I don't have a wrinkle. You absolutely have a wrinkle. It's adorable. He captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I love you, Sophia. So much it terrifies me sometimes. I love you too. The words came easily now, though the first time she'd said them, 2 months ago, in her apartment after he'd spent 3 hours helping her hang her art for the gallery showing. He'd looked at her like she'd given him the world. Even though you're terrible at cooking, and you sometimes still try to control things you shouldn't. I'm working on that. I know. She leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. And I'm working on letting you take care of me sometimes, instead of insisting I can do everything alone. Team effort? Team effort. They stayed on the floor for a long time, wrapped in each other, talking about everything and nothing, about the wedding they'd plan, much smaller than Victoria's disaster, but filled with people they actually cared about whether they'd live in his penthouse or her apartment or somewhere in between, about children, maybe, someday, if they were brave enough. I can't believe this all started because I hired you to break up a wedding, Adrian mused, running his fingers through her hair. Technically, you hired me to pretend to be your fiancé. Breaking up the wedding was just a bonus. A bonus that actually worked, just not how I planned. Sophia propped herself up on his chest, looking down at him. Do you regret it? The scheme, the lies, all of it? He considered for a moment. I regret lying to Marcus. I regret the pain it caused. But regret meeting you? Never. Even if it happened in the most ridiculous way possible. We do have a ridiculous origin story. It'll make for great dinner party conversation. He grinned. How did you meet your husband? Oh, he paid me $10,000 to fake an engagement and sabotage his brother's wedding. You know, the usual. Your mother will be so proud. She already is. You know she's been introducing you as Adrian's future wife for the last month? She what? Oh yes, complete with showing people your art on her phone and telling them how talented and level-headed you are. Adrian's eyes sparkled with amusement. I think she likes you more than she likes me. That's because I'm delightful. You are. He said it so simply, so sincerely, that Sophia felt her chest tighten. You really, genuinely are. Later, after they'd ordered takeout and eaten it sitting on the floor by the windows, Sophia pulled out her phone. I should call my mom. She already knows. At Sophia's surprised look, Adrian shrugged. I called her right after I called you this morning. Wanted to make sure she was okay with me proposing today. You're really committed to this asking permission thing. Your mother is the most important person in your life. If she didn't approve, I needed to know. Sophia's eyes filled with tears again. What did she say? She said, that boy better treat you like the treasure you are, or I'll drive down there and kick his ass myself. Adrian's impression of her mother's voice was terrible, but it made Sophia laugh. Then she said she's very happy for us, and she can't wait to see you in a wedding dress that isn't rented. I love you, Sophia said, for what felt like the 100th time that night, but would never be enough. I love you so much. Love you too. He pulled her close, his chin resting on her head. My fake fiancé turned real everything. Outside, the city glowed like a constellation of dreams. Inside, two people who'd met under the strangest circumstances held each other in the growing dark, already planning their future, already building something real from the ashes of a lie. Still following the story? Comment below what you want to hear next. 6 months after Adrian's proposal, spring arrived with cherry blossoms and renewal. Marcus and Rebecca's wedding took place at a small vineyard outside the city, the ceremony intimate and genuine. Sophia stood as a bridesmaid, wearing pale pink and watching Adrian serve as his brother's best man. The speech he gave made half the guests cry, talking about second chances and the bravery it takes to trust again after being hurt. "My brother taught me something important," Adrian said, his voice carrying across the vineyard as sunset painted everything gold. "He taught me that love is worth the risk, that being vulnerable isn't weakness, and that sometimes the mistakes we make lead us exactly where we need to be." His eyes found Sophia's in the crowd, and she smiled, her engagement ring catching the fading light. After Marcus and Rebecca's wedding, life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Sophia's art was gaining recognition. 3 galleries now showing her work, collectors beginning to take notice. Adrian had stepped back slightly from the company, delegating more, making time for things that mattered. Dinners with his brother. Long weekends with Sophia, where they didn't talk about work at all. Therapy sessions where he confronted the control issues his father had instilled. They were planning their own wedding now, set for autumn when the leaves turned copper and gold. Something small, they had decided. Close friends and family only. No massive spectacle, just them and the people they loved most. "What about the church?" Adrian's mother asked during one planning session at her house. Catherine had thrown herself into wedding planning with enthusiasm, pulling out binder after binder of options. "Actually," Sophia said, glancing at Adrian, "we were thinking about the vineyard, where Marcus and Rebecca got married." Catherine's face softened. "Oh, that's perfect. Absolutely perfect." Richard, sitting in his armchair reading the financial section, looked up. "Just make sure there's an open bar. These small weddings can drag if people can't drink." "Richard!" Catherine swatted him with a bridal magazine. "What?" "I'm being practical." Adrian caught Sophia's eye and grinned. These family moments, once awkward and formal, had become warm and comfortable. She'd been fully absorbed into the Hastings clan, for better or worse. Even Richard had come around, going so far as to commission 3 paintings for his office. "Speaking of the wedding," Adrian said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Sophia and I wanted to give you something." Catherine opened it, pulling out 2 tickets. Her eyes widened. "Adrian, this is a 2-week Mediterranean cruise, the one you've been talking about for 5 years." He shrugged, trying to look casual. "Consider it a thank you for putting up with me all these years." Richard set down his newspaper, emotion flickering across his usually stern face. "Son, this is too much." "It's not enough," Adrian said quietly. "I know I haven't always been easy. I know I've been cold and distant and too caught up in work. But you never gave up on me. Either of you. This is just a small way of saying thank you." Catherine was crying now, pulling both Adrian and Sophia into a tight hug. Even Richard's eyes looked suspiciously bright as he clasped his son's shoulder. Later that evening, driving back to the penthouse, Sophia watched Adrian navigate the city streets, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers. "You've changed," she said softly. "Is that a good thing?" "It's a beautiful thing." She squeezed his fingers. "You're letting people in. You're letting yourself be soft sometimes. Only because you showed me how." He lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "You taught me that vulnerability isn't the same as weakness." They spent that night on the penthouse terrace, wrapped in blankets under the stars, talking about their future. About maybe moving to a house with a yard someday, maybe getting a dog, maybe starting a family when they were ready. All the beautiful, ordinary things that once seemed impossible to someone who'd armored his heart so thoroughly. "Do you ever think about that night at the rehearsal dinner?" Sophia asked. "About how differently things could have gone? All the time." Adrian's arm tightened around her. "If Marcus hadn't been dating Victoria, if I hadn't been desperate enough to hire a stranger, if you hadn't been brave enough to say yes, if Victoria hadn't turned out to be exactly as terrible as you thought, if Rebecca hadn't shown up to object, if I hadn't fallen in love with you for real." Sophia tilted her head back to look at him. "Do you think we would have met another way?" "I'd like to think so. Maybe you would have been the barista who got my coffee order wrong, and I would have been charmed instead of annoyed. You're never charmed when people get your order wrong. I would have been if it was you." He kissed her forehead, her nose, finally her lips. "I think we were always going to find each other, Sophia. The universe just chose the most dramatic route possible." The wedding, when it finally arrived, was everything they'd hoped for. Autumn had dressed the vineyard in shades of amber and crimson, the air crisp and sweet. Sophia wore a simple ivory gown that made her look like something from a dream, her dark hair flowing free down her back. Adrian, in a perfectly fitted charcoal suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. Marcus stood as best man, Rebecca as maid of honor. Their parents sat in the front row, Catherine already crying, Richard pretending he had allergies. Margaret beamed from her seat, probably thinking about how she'd predicted this from the start. But the most important person wasn't in a seat at all. Sophia's mother, healthy and strong after her successful surgery, walked her daughter down the aisle. Her smile was radiant, her hand steady in Sophia's. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, before handing Sophia over to Adrian. "You found someone who sees how special you are." The ceremony was short and sweet. No lengthy speeches, no elaborate rituals. Just two people promising to love each other, to be honest with each other, to build a life together based on trust and genuine affection. When the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," Adrian pulled Sophia close and kissed her with enough passion to make several guests whistle and cheer. She laughed against his lips, her arms wrapping around his neck, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. "I love you," he murmured, barely audible over the applause. "My fake fiancée turned real wife." "I love you too," she whispered back. "My ridiculous, wonderful husband." The reception was filled with laughter and dancing, good food, and better wine. Sophia's art hung throughout the venue, transforming the space into a gallery of color and light. People who'd once dismissed her as just a barista now studied her work with admiration, commissioning pieces, spreading the word. During his best man speech, Marcus raised his glass high. "To my brother, who proved that even the most carefully controlled plans can lead to unexpected happiness. And to Sophia, who saw beneath the ice and found the heart underneath. May your marriage be filled with as much love as your engagement was filled with chaos." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Adrian and Sophia exchanged glances, remembering that first night, the rehearsal dinner, that had changed everything. Late into the evening, after most guests had left and only close family remained, Sophia and Adrian swayed together on the dance floor. The band played something slow and sweet, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid beat of his heart. "Happy?" he asked. "Incredibly. No regrets?" "Only that I didn't bring comfortable shoes for dancing." He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest into hers. "We can sit down." "No." She tightened her arms around him. "I want to stay right here." And so they did, dancing in the warm glow of string lights, surrounded by the people who loved them, building memories that would last a lifetime. What did you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking on the end screen.